My name is Salek Tikande. I am the Hacker Community Fellow at the Community Engagement Center, Pitzer. So basically, we provide this training every year to make sure that our students receive some basic knowledge, of community engagement framework. Not only, to make sure they receive that before they go to either work with our community partners, but also to make sure that professors and faculties and staff know that students are aware of some basic knowledge of how to conduct community engagement in general. Jonathan, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, everyone. I said it before, but my name is Jonathan Chan. I'm the program admin for research and training at the CEC. I work with Select in a number of capacities with liaison work between the local community that are working within social movements and institutional change movements, and our campus community. So we're the connector piece, and part of our job is also to provide training, the skills, knowledge that are necessary to conduct, as Select was saying, community engagement work and social responsibility work. So we're so excited to, get this year started just because, it's a new year. It's very interesting and it's going to be very different. And in saying so, we can't wait to hear about all the great work that you're going to do with your designated community partners. So Select, go ahead, take it away.
Yes, before I start, CC had a question in the chat. I just, if for some reason you have to leave, we are going to be recording this session, so you can have a makeup session on your own and then take the quiz at the end. All right. So before we start, the CEC always do a Tongval acknowledgement. If for some reason, if you are not in California and you are somewhere else, we do know that we are now on Native people. We are on Native people land. The Pitzer College campus is standing on the Tongva land. This is why we are doing the Tongva land acknowledgement. That was actually written by our elder in residence, Julia Bogani. If Jonathan is going to drop a phone number in the chat. I actually learned that last week. You can test your location, your city and your state to this number, and it will tell you if they do have it on in the database. It will tell you on which land you are standing, which native land you are standing on. And you can share that with us on the chat if you want to. But I'm gonna go ahead and read the land acknowledgement. We, the indigenous people, the traditional caretaker of this landscape, are the direct descendants of the first people who formed our lands, our worlds during creation time. We have always been here. Our ancestors prepared and became the landscape and worlds for the coming of human with order, knowledge, and gifts embedded in the landscape. Our ancestors imbued the responsibility and obligation to our original instructions, guided by protocols and etiquettes to be part of, take care of, and ensure the welfare of the extended family and community defined in its most inclusive expression, the nature, and to pass those teachings and responsibilities into our children, grandchildren, and many generations to come, and to all those that now live here. This was written by Julia Bogani, Gabriel Tongva San Gabriel Ben of Mission Indians, who is our current native elder in residence at the Claremont Colleges. So why do we have social responsibility as a core value? Social responsibility for students, for any students who go to Pitzer College, they have to actually complete the social responsibility core value, and that it comes in two different classes. So one is justice theory, and the other one is social responsibility praxis. So you'll be taking 2 classes under that core value before you graduate from Pitzer College. And it is part of a Pitzer's educational mission to examine the ethical implication. Give me one second. The ethical implication of knowledge and individual responsibility in making the world a better place. And then it also gives us the tools to evaluate the impact of individuals and collective actions manifested in social and political policies in the classroom. Is how we learn about the ways in which we are complicit or resisting to circles of oppression. So ultimately, we should, ask yourself these questions. Jonathan?
Yeah, so these questions are important because we understand as students and as folks that work at Pitzer and even faculty, it's important for us to think about social responsibility as a core value because there is great power and privilege that comes with going to a school such as Pitzer and just going to higher education in general. So as students, we understand that this opportunity to learn in a hands-on experience with real life outputs with community partners that are working on awesome, projects for equity, social justice, and diversity. These kinds of things are important, and for us to, have this journey of, as we're going to talk about praxis within that, that examines ourselves and the kinds of things that, you may hold near and dear to your heart or hold towards the future as a, just personally or professionally. So some of these reflection questions may be important for you to, think about, but also we're going to provide a reframing of these questions later on too, after learning about the frameworks that we're going to be talking about. But some of these reflection questions that you may have during this, training may be, which skills and knowledge am I able to use in my community engagement experience, which is number one. Number two, what does social responsibility look like for me and what I'm passionate about? And three, where do I see this kind of learning having an impact on my future? And there's nothing wrong with thinking about these kinds of questions or taking note of these questions for yourself. But later on, like I said before, we're going to reframe them in a way that's more about community and whatnot. But as of right now, we may be starting from scratch, or we may be starting from a point in which we're trying to understand how does remote community engagement fit in everything? And how is it not more individualistic if we're not seeing people up close or seeing outputs actualized in real life? So we'll be talking more about that later. But if you could go to the next slide, Select. So community engagement right now in the current state of the world. So why we thought this, this training is extremely important for everybody to take, even though it's remote community engagement, is that even though it's remote, the work has never been more impactful than it is now. To work with community partners that are working with, populations that have been direly affected by, the pandemic, social unrest and protests, the incoming election. There's tons of reasons as to why remote community engagement work is important. And there's tons of ways to plug in. And the CEC is working on those kinds of ways to help you and help faculty, assess how can we have the most impact even from a distance from our laptops. And so what that looks like is, plugging into doing remote tutoring for youth from underserved areas that don't have the same educational resources or access that some other areas have. What it also looks like is conducting research online on a number of different social issues such as food deserts, incarceration, recidivism. All these kinds of things can be done from a distance. And so secondly, community engagement work is also extremely important because there's never been this kind of chance to learn, grow, and connect than there has been before in a way that we're reimagining the world from a distance. And so that's extremely important to note as well, because now we have webinars, workshops from the CEC side, but also from the partner side and from all over the world really, that examines the ways that the pandemic The protests, the upcoming elections are going to affect us all, and it's a great way to get informed. And lastly, community engagement work is also extremely important in this current state of the world because it gives us an opportunity to reflect upon our past, present, and future. With so much information coming at us, with a multitude of ways to connect, we begin to unpack the ways that we have power and privilege within spaces or within thought processes, including like technology access, just what we have as basic necessities, running water, and just acknowledging, not everybody has the same access to these kinds of resources, but also the ways in which we can support and be, sensitive to those kinds of things when we work with these kinds of communities, but also to recognize, the ways that we need to also learn and grow. Next. So that being said, we want to start from a basis, right? We want to start from a point in which we understand why the work is important. Without a foundation, a building cannot stand, correct? So in understanding that, we have to know why the work is important and why the work has to happen in the first place. And how that takes place is acknowledging theories and frameworks for community engagement. So these theories and frameworks for community engagement are extremely important because they start from the top and go all the way down to the bottom to acknowledge just the basics of what is the foundation, how's the frameworks for action take place, and what are those small little things, what are those small little habits, those small actions that are important for us to take forward. Next. So praxis. This term gets thrown around a lot. So what do we think of as praxis? And praxis as a process and theory for education is something that Pitzer College is extremely about. As Select was talking about, social responsibility praxis as a course is a graduation requirement. And so why do we hold it with such importance, hold it as an essential to the learning, the curriculum at Pitzer College? And that's because of the very nature of, how simplistic, but how effective it is. So praxis as it stands is a three-part framework / theory, which takes into account the theory portion, which you start with knowledge, informal theory or academic theory, which then informs your action, which then allows you to reflect upon your experience and or information or action that you take. And this happens in a cycle. And this cycle doesn't encompass just one part of your life or just one issue in your life, but it encompasses many things that are intersecting and intertwining. One way that you might learn about social issues in regards to gender may affect that you think about the ways that you think about sexual orientation. So these things are fluid in a time sense, in a knowledge sense, and in a subject sense. So praxis is fluid, but it's also a very simplistic way of understanding how you may encounter knowledge and how you use it and how it informs the work that you'll do later, personally and professionally. Next. And so as simplistic and awesome as it is, praxis, it was thought up, or rather it was coined by, the educator and philosopher Paulo Freire, who's very notable for their work known as Pedagogy of the Oppressed. And their work actually influenced many people to use a similar cycle or to think about education or information being passed as a cyclical way of socializing and historicizing certain narratives about the world and about people. So in understanding that, we recognize that many different things happen in a cycle and that this applies to many different kinds of theories that are used around the world. And one such theory is known as the cycle of socialization, which is a sociological theory by a theorist named Bobby Harrow, who recognizes a form of praxis in a social sense, in a societal sense. So in this theory, the cycle of socialization, it begins as the birth, literally your birth. So without understanding or knowing the world, you're born into contexts, into positions, into narratives that are placed upon your body, based upon your skin color, where you live, your family, all these different kinds of things. The family socialization comes next, or those closest around you, those in your neighborhood. And they bring about knowledge pieces that they've used to either thrive or survive in the environment that they have been exposed to, which then moves into institutional and cultural socialization, which reinforces certain, systems that may be harmful, systems of oppression. So when we think about the military industrial complex, when we think about, the prison industrial complex, those different kinds of things as a means of how we utilize the public person power and narratives around how those are in cyclical nature of utilizing, folks at a disadvantage, or possibly folks who are in underserved communities. It's extremely important to note those kinds of things, how they are powerful, but how they can be oppressive. And so we carry that on as adults through silence and collusion. And we allow those institutions or those kinds of problems within institutions to exist and to be perpetuated in a cycle where we accept those things, we normalize those things, and they become historicized as normal. Next. So then we are now into the cycle of liberation, which is also another theory by Bobby Harrow. And Bobby Harrow, explains that there can be a rebirth, an acknowledgement of waking up, a critical incidence that creates cognitive dissonance from which we no longer want to choose to follow those kinds of harmful narratives or systems that say certain things about people or populations or the way that life should be. So we get self-educated, we get ready, we get inspired, we get empowered with other people by building that community. And thus that community allows us to create change by building new institutions and new systems that reinvent or uproot systems and institutions of oppression and that hold certain powers and privileges for themselves, and allows us to inspire others, live our dreams, reimagine the world in ways that we can change it. Next. So these institutions and systems are part of our daily lives. And so whether you want to acknowledge it or not, we are either complicit or we are resisting these systems or institutions. So how they actualize themselves in our lives, although we may not always think about it, they're inequities in resources, local schools and textbooks, public recreation and facilities that they have for folks, even government funded jobs, on a city level, like what exists within your city, whether it's, an abundance of those things or whether, it's a deficit of those things. It's important to know because those things can change and you can be part of that change. Whether you choose to acknowledge those things or not is one of the first parts of, starting that cycle of, praxis. Secondly, these kinds of institutions that are part of our daily lives, help to typecast people by their identities or give them narratives that are, specifically oriented to who they are, where they come from, sexual orientation, gender, race, disability, etc. And the last point to this is not one person is absolved from taking part or having positions in systems/institutions. And so that's important to know because even if you do have power and privilege, it affects you in some way or another. Even more so, the different systems/institutions react differently to one's position depending on the intersection of identities. Next. And so this is extremely important because we have to understand who we are within these systems and these institutions and understand how our identities intersect as such. So that recognition of positionality and intersectionality within ourselves is extremely, essential to community engagement and just having a critical thought process for the way that we live, and the way that we conduct work in general. Excuse me. So positionality, what is it? Positionality is the recognition of the space you occupy within the identities you are given. How one uses power and privilege they hold is about perpetuating harmful systems/institutions or working to change cycles. So it's extremely, thought-provoking to think that, within spaces we have political advantages or disadvantages, the way that we hold our positions, the way that our bodies are politicized, and represent certain things. And to note that as you walk into a room, as you even enter a virtual space, is important because people can see you, people note the way that you communicate with them. And that is important to the work that you do because, spaces and contexts are fluid, situations are fluid. And so to know where you stand is important as to recognize, the impact that you may have with your work and how it is interpreted. Along with that, intersectionality is also something that you should recognize. Intersectionality is the unique interplay between the various identities an individual and or group occupies. How one distinguishes the layers of social norms that are impressed upon them enables more critical thinking and action. So yet again, even within certain spaces and within certain interactions that you may have, your identities, the various ones that you do have, whether it's race, whether it's ability and whatnot, they interplay differently with different people. And so you have to be cognizant of that when you work with other people and you apply the frameworks that we're going to be talking about later on. And so these are, extremely useful thought processes when you apply community engagement frameworks, which will be in the slides just after this. But ultimately, both these thought processes are essential to applying community engagement frameworks in ever-changing contexts and situations. Very integral to understanding how just by a click of a button, you may find yourself, in a city council meeting taking notes for a community partner, or even, tapping into possibly a tutoring session that is for foster youth rather than just an everyday, public school tutoring service. These kinds of nuances to the spaces that you'll step into virtually are important to know and important for you to understand and do your research on where you stand as an individual in relation to the program that you're working with. Next. So number one, what is the first community engagement framework that we're going to be talking about? And that first one is equitable community practices. So what does that mean, equity? So equitable actions is what is fair and just rather than what is equal. Historic and institutional power disparities have created rifts in the resources and privileges between communities. Excuse me. Acting with equity in mind is a framework that gives weight to differing realities and experiences people are subject to. Excuse me. So showing how this works out into the real world, or how you manifest, equitable community practices in the real world, can be shown through things such as adapting power representation in relationship/work dynamics. So that may be seen as how you may stand in a podium during a meeting, or how you may sit around a table in real lifetime or in real time with interactions with people in person. Setting standards for open communication. So, allowing people the space and time to speak regardless of their position. Respecting that the intent of an action may not always have the same impact on someone else. So this is extremely important because we need to understand that people come from different backgrounds, people come from different experiences. And this goes hand in hand with what we're talking about with positionality and intersectionality, that someone may interpret, your intention or the impact of your action differently than you had originally intended it for it to be. So in knowing that, you should be able to be flexible and understanding why it may be taken a different way based upon not only who you are, but the kinds of things that that you may have your knowledge or skills based upon, and that you should be adaptable to learning and to adapting to, the needs of the community or the perspectives of the community. Next. So examples of this. We have inside out courses that grant college credits right now, courses that are, both inside and outside of incarceration facilities that are taking place with our students from a distance. One such way that this is having an impact from a distance is that we actually have just started, one of the first connections via Zoom, which is the internet, with our community partners at those incarceration facilities to have college credits granted to students on the inside. And that's a beautiful thing because, there hasn't been that internet access granted to them before. And so that's one way of thinking about equitable actions within a time that's very hard for folks on the inside. And also another example of this is community gardens supporting food insecure families. So in food deserts, in places of high unemployment rates, community gardens that we work with and that are in the local area are working to provide, nutrition and whatnot through nutritious goods that they grow on their farms and within spaces that are allotted to them by their own means or by local government. Next. So the second framework that we're going to be talking about is asset-based thinking. And so essentially, relatively simple, asset-based thinking is the opposite of deficit thinking. Instead of feeling pity for others and following traditional power structures, it is important to recognize the strengths of individuals/communities that have been seen as less than. Focusing on assets that people have leads to more collaborative efforts in working for a cause/issue. So understanding, that it's not specifically just about the manner in which you have strengths, but what are the strengths of the community that you can use synergistically to work towards a common cause or goal. So encouraging others to use their different perspectives and backgrounds for creative solutions. That's one such way. Reflection on internal strengths and past accomplishments. Recognizing the benefit and reciprocity of learning. So in doing this, we understand that how we encourage others to use their different perspectives and backgrounds for creative solutions may include the ways that they're multilingual, the ways that they have different perspectives of how to portray things in the media that could be helpful to overall what they do to market, activities or programs that their nonprofit is about. So some examples of this are online citizenship curriculum with resources, with places such as the Literacy for All in Monterey Park that it talks about citizenship curriculum within a multilingual way with the Mandarin speaking and sometimes Spanish speaking community. Another example of this is the multilingual webinars and workshops that have to do with rights of folks as far as like renters' rights. And this is actually a poster from the Pomona COVID-19 Action Committee that uses multilingual folks to help out with pamphlet and marketing tools distribution. Next. Sustainable change building. So we want this to work in a cycle, right? We want to be able to perpetuate these kinds of helpful things, not harmful things. And so sustainable change is not social charity. So social charity is based upon the immediate need, which is important in this time. So we do not want to diminish that when there is immediate need, but sustainable change is not about immediate needs specifically. It is about the practice of building relationships and systems, bodies of knowledge that can be carried over to work against cycles of oppression. Growing network dedicated to change. training others to carry on the work, valuing connections and experiences made between people, and focusing on small wins. All these kinds of ways of working within sustainable change building is important to how we notice that we're working towards things that last. So one important thing, or one thing that I really want to hone in on, is the focus on small wins. And the focus on small wins is important because within your space, whether it's a 40-hour internship component, whether you're working with CASA from a distance on research opportunities, focusing on small wins is important because just as, cycle of socialization has it, it works with times, it works with generations, it works within decades, centuries, to pass on these harmful narratives. All those kinds of things were passed on through increments and were believed and perpetuated through increments. And so in that same way, we need to be able to focus on the ways that we can have impacts in whatever capacity that we have, whether it's communication with a person, whether it's building a certain curriculum for a program. These are the kinds of small wins that help us get to where we want to be as far as uprooting, these systems and cycles of oppression. And they're important, and they overall add to the value of the work that we do together and the collective consciousness for how we're, working towards liberation, not only for ourselves, but in the interest of others, so that we collectively come together to liberate one another from these harmful things. Next. And so some examples of this are, our Promise Scholars Partner, which is supporting online mentorship networks. And so how this happens in a sustainable change cycle is our partners work with college access means now from a distance within videos or webinars to get college going, or college ready students, or even professional trades people focused students within the Ontario Montclair School District, thinking about what's the next step for them after they go from high school. And so what this may look like is, going to schools in terms of virtual tours, in terms of those panels that we just mentioned. And what ends up happening a lot in this program, and it's really awesome, is that a lot of the students that go through this program after they graduate college become professionals and whatnot. They become mentors for other college going and professional preparation seeking students to move forward. And so it continues itself in a cycle. Another example of sustainable change building is institutional investment as partners. And the way that we see that is through our CASA program. So we have obviously CASA Pitzer, which is an institutional investment on our side to invest in the great community educators that exist within the Ontario and even parts of Pomona and Greater Inland Empire area that are supporting our students, that are getting them knowledgeable, and even our general campus community knowledgeable about the types of important measures that are being taken in the community that are providing ways for us to get involved for the liberty of all. And that's a cyclical in nature as well. Having them invest in us and us invest in them. Next. And so lastly, to conclude, kind of these sorts of things about, or to conclude the material about theories and frameworks for community engagement, we have to know that praxis continues. It's an ongoing process with different cycles of learning impacting one another and informing one another regardless of time and space, as we talked about before. It has existed for you in various capacities before Pitzer, during Pitzer, and will be a way to inform yourself after Pitzer. So ways that we can think about this after, I gave you those initial reflection questions that were about the individual, about you all as students. We also need to reframe them as you enter other spaces, just to, recognize the positionality and the intersectionality that you do have. As these reflection questions, which is number one, which skills and knowledge do I need to learn from community educators to better support social responsibility work? So the original question was, what are the things that I'm seeking? But now we also need to think about what are the things that I need to build in order to be of support for these kinds of causes. Number two, what does social responsibility look like when working with others and their passions rather than working for others? So not only interested in what I'm passionate about, which is what the original question was mainly about, which is important to note what you are passionate about, but a reframing in this specific instance when you're working with community partners, that what does it look like when we're working in a collective unit? How do we lean on one another's passions, right? And lastly, 3, where can I support impact now that I will be part of a better collective future for many? And so, sorry, let me reread that. Where can I support impact now that I will be part of a better collective future for many? So understanding not only where you want to be in the future, but knowing that you can be part of action right now. You can be part of change right now, and how that informs the ways, you know, that you may be interested in other social issues actually may surprise you. A lot of things are interconnected, whether it's environmentalism, whether it's immigration and labor. These kinds of things are um, interrelated in many ways and affect each other in many ways, and they can teach you something, even if it isn't strictly what you are interested in. You'll find ways that those kinds of things connect, and why the liberation for all, and in working towards that process or that goal is an ongoing thing that includes all of us and all of our interests and all of our passions for community engagement work and change. Next. And so all these things considered, we're going to get into, the small habits, the nitty gritty things that are important for us to recognize, the online etiquette and communication in time of a pandemic, because those same ways that we just talked about, all those important theories and frameworks can be integrated into, the everyday of working from your laptop with community partners. So Select, take it away.
Yeah. So basically, even though we are having remote community engagement during this pandemic time, we still have to be mindful about the way we communicate with our community partners, and we still have to be mindful about every action that we take during programming or how to follow up and things like that. So we just kind of wanted to address those little things before you start to communicate with your specific community partners and start to get involved into programming. So online correspondence. Um, During this period, there is a high online correspondence between community partners, staff. So community partners, staff, and resources are like just very highly impacted by the pandemic, and I think it's very important for us to be aware of that. So whether you are talking to others by email or video chat, there's like a number of things that we need to consider when we are communicating online. So one of the things that we need to keep in mind is that we always want to ask for the preference in how they would like to be addressed, the pronoun or the pronunciation of the name. We do work with community partners from all over the world. We work from people who are coming from all over the world. Myself, I'm from Benin in West Africa, so it's very important to ask people how they would like to how the name is pronounced and what pronoun they use. Always greet people. And and do your introduction. Have your 1 minute introduction ready when you go into community meetings or when you are invited into those meetings, into those spaces. Always make sure you're greeting everyone and you have your small introductory, 30-second or 45-second introductory speech about yourself and where you're coming from and why you are in the space. The other thing is that you need to have some patience and consideration when you are communicating with staff members who may be pushed to the limits at this time. One thing you need to understand is even though we are in a partnership with our community partners, sometimes it can be, we are helping with project or they are just inviting us in their space. And not only that, in general, nonprofits in general or community-based organizations, they are understaffed. So when you're emailing them or you have a request, you have to always keep in mind that they have, hundreds of things going on, especially right now during the pandemic where there's a high need of everything. People have been impacted, people have lost their jobs, people who still have the jobs are working even more. They have children at home. Children, we have now, remote schooling, and so people are still home with their children and still working. So you need to keep that in mind when you email them and they don't get back to you right away. Just be patient. And also when they give you directions about things, make sure you take notes so you don't have to like ask the question, several times. Also take the initiative to follow up. So again, if you don't follow up, if you don't follow up right away, or if you want to be patient, you can follow up later on or a few days later. Just make sure that you know you give them some time to actually get to your email, and just follow up. So next is just professionalism in general. Community partners are based upon a real outcome and output for nonprofits and community organization, creating institutional and social change. And community engagement during the pandemic is a serious matter for many of the community partners we are working with, and can be given proper attention by actively listening. Active listening is very important. It's so easy to get distracted nowadays, especially with the Zooms. By the time you're on your third Zoom of a day after 2 or 3 classes, you just somewhere else. So make sure you are attentive. Be aware of your body language. Make sure you are listening. You know, to everything they're saying. Take notes as well. That's very important. For every meeting that we have at the community engagement center with community partners, we always have meeting notes, so we can get back to our meeting notes and we make sure that we actually address every single thing that we discussed. Present yourself as a serious intern, appearance and a voice. I said take note before, set calendar appointments. You know, if you need help, about these little things, you can reach out to us. You can say, hey, listen, I'm going through this. We have a lot going on during our community project. What kind of tools do you have to actually make it easier on myself to make sure that we have all this. I'm done with all the project that I'm supposed to do and I meet all the deadlines. Document your work and share your updates. So it goes back again to what I said: taking notes, listening, and why it is important to actually document everything that you are doing, because at the end of the year you might be applying for student awards. So if you don't take notes, how will you know everything that you've done in the past? So if you take notes of everything you're doing, and you document your work, then later on when you are writing a 5-page document or like a 3-page document about your work in the community and how many hours you actually spent doing this work, it will be easy for you to apply, for example, for one of those awards that I will talk about very soon. So 5 easy steps to connecting with community partners. Why do we have this? Because even though the CEC is there to connect you with community partners, you can also take your own initiative to actually get in touch with community partners. And we wanted to actually give you a few ways to connect with them, and then few tools to make sure that you actually can um, connect with them effectively. Um, so you can talk to your professor or the community engagement center to determine your base placement site. We have students who reach out to us during the summer and they say, hey, listen, I'm very passionate about, for example, tutoring. I would love to work with, high school students or elementary school students. How can I get involved? So we love that, because then we can actually put you in touch with a community partner that's doing specifically what you're passionate about, or we can give you few community partners, and then you can go from there yourself, or we can help you to connect to them. Connect with your partner and tell them that you're a student and you would like to complete a course-based volunteer or internship with their organization. So once we give you a list of community partners doing specifically what you are interested in, you can reach out to them, or we can both do the connection. If you need the CEC to assist you in doing that, we can do that as well. confirm your weekly availability scheduling, stop time and holidays for the semester or year with your site. So this is very important. Um, Before you actually reach out to us or the community partners, this is something that you need to know. I can only work for 4 hours a week on Wednesdays from 4:30 to 6 p.m. and on Fridays from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. So so that when you emailing the community partner, you tell them exactly your schedule, you tell them, when you are going on break, your holidays, you have a list of, you know exactly how many hours you might be able to work this semester, if it's 40 hours or 60 hours. Um, then they actually see that the student is very serious about doing this work. So it's not just like, oh, I need to do this, you need to find me, a site right now. It is like, okay, not only I'm passionate about this, but I also know how I can be involved and I know my limitations, and they take you seriously. If you need some technology help and technology needs, the Dean of Students have a loan program, and IT can help you as well with different computer programs that you need. Jonathan will drop a link for the Dean of Student loan program in the chat. And then lastly, uh, please always complete any clearance if you need to have a clearance. So some community partners require you to have a clearance. If you are working with children, for example, you might be required to go through a clearance process. Jonathan will also drop the clearance link there. Um, if your community partner requires, if they don't require, it's fine. You don't have to do it. Um, and then how this clearance works, we're gonna go through that at the end of this presentation so that you can know exactly what to do. Your interview day, some site also require interviews. We usually, with CEC, we have an informal interview with you. You coming through our Zoom sessions and talk about your passion, why you want to do this, and then you go through different hiring requirements if they do have those hiring requirements, on site, including clearance as well. So just having your availability ready and making sure that you have, you know exactly when you can do your interview. You know exactly what days and times you can work, so that when they ask you questions, you are ready to answer. Now we talk about student resources. What do we have at the CVC, and how do we try to meet our students' needs when they are doing community engagement work? We have office hours Mondays through Fridays, from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. You can either come in you can take an appointment one of those days and come in. So we have specific sessions just for you, and we're going to breakout rooms, or you can just walk in. We also have a newly designed CEC website. Jonathan's going to drop the CEC website in the chat. That website was designed specifically for during to meet the needs of our partners during the pandemic. So we reassessed all our ways of engaging with our partners, and we redesigned our website based on the needs. We have training and learning opportunities. We have different events throughout the semester. Um, there are different staff members of the CEC leads, including our director and Jonathan, who's here. So just keep your eyes open, and like also check our websites. We have events. We have events on our website. You can come to attend these events. We have events that I never attended until I graduated and I came. We have an event on lesson planning. That's basically one of my favorite one. Um, and I will always attend that, as long as I'm around here. Um, we have reimbursement for clearances, for clearance and for clearance and paperwork and live scan. So if for some reason you get charged to do clearance in your town, you can submit your reimbursement documents so you can get reimbursed. for all the fees. And then if you don't have the resources to actually do it before to actually do the currents, we can also make sure that you get the funds that you need to go to do your currents. And then, make sure that you look at different locations. Right now, it's not safe for some people to actually go to your local police station to do that. So other organizations, in your town also do live scan. So this live scan process is not just police stations that, are allowed to do that. So just make sure you Google it, and you have different areas where you can actually go into those, and make sure you go to the area where it's safer for you. We have student jobs positions on Handshake. So make sure you check Handshake if you want to work with us, you want to work at the CEC, this semester, next semester, or next year. Here we always have positions online. Check them out. A lot of students are applying right now. We're gonna be conducting interviews very soon. We also have volunteer opportunities. Our volunteer opportunities are on our website. So if you want to be involved in our different pillars of engagement, you click on them. There's always a get involved or volunteer now button where you click on it, and you're going to have a list of different opportunities. Keep in mind, those volunteer opportunities are very limited. So if you don't apply right away, probably not gonna get it, because we already have so many applicants, and there are so many limited spots with our community partners. Then lastly, we have community engagement awards. We have a Calic Community Service Student Award twice a year. It's a $500. Um, you have to complete about 100 hours of community engagement, and then it goes back again to what I was saying about taking notes, and like making sure you like take note about everything you're doing, for everything that you are doing, and how you're doing it, and how many hours you're spending doing them. Because at the end of the year, you might need to do some write-ups about these things, or you might be writing your thesis in a few years, and you can go back to your notebook and be, oh, whoa, I've done that. This is how I did it, and this is what I learned from this specific engagement. So this curriculum award will require some write-ups. So if you have your notes, then it's really easy. When I was applying for this one, I realized that I didn't have all my notes, so I had to go back and talk to the people that I work with to make sure that I write actually the right things. Um, and then during the curriculum award as well, there's certain questions about frameworks. So this this training would actually also help you in the future to talk about how you conduct your community engagement work as well. Um, we have a postbaccalaureate community fellowship, which I'm doing right now. It's a 1 to 2 year fellowship. You can apply for it after you graduate from Pitzer. If you want to get some community engagement skills, you can apply for the postbaccalaureate community fellowship that I'm doing right now. And then the other ones are gonna come as you know, as you just read your emails coming up, communications coming out of CEC, and you have all of the information you need, right? So now we're gonna have our community engagement student and alumni panel. Um, Jen, are you here? Yes.
Yes, I am. Hello.
Good. Jen is here. Stephanie, yes, and Amanda. All right. I'm gonna let our students and alumni introduce themselves. Jonathan, do you wanna lead this with questions since I'm sharing the screen here? I don't have the questions.
Excuse me?
Do you wanna lead with the questions? I since I'm sharing the screen, I don't have the questions here.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, everyone. We could go down the list from 1 to 2 to 3. If you could please introduce yourself briefly and just explain, your involvement with community engagement and whatnot.
All right. Hello, everyone. Good morning. My name is Jan. My pronouns are she, hers. I am from Pomona, California, and I graduated with the class of 2020 as a sociology and international intercultural studies combined major. And my past involvements with CEC dates back from my freshman year when I took my first ever social responsibility praxis course. It was called Voter Engagement in the New Left. And then furthermore, junior year where I was a Girls Fly intern with Amanda. And then most recently, my senior year as an outside student for the Inside Out program and a citizenship coach for Literacy for All Monterey Park.
Awesome, thank you. Stephanie?
Hi everyone, my name is Stephanie. I am a senior, at Pitzer. I am majoring in neuroscience with a minor of Chicana, Latinx transnational studies. I'm a past engagement with the CEC. It's that I've been actually doing encuentros. It's freshman year, which basically what we do is that we bring workers from Pomona City and they come to Pitzer every Friday and we eat with them. We invite professors to kind of like have workshops with them, or like mental health. And yeah, so that has been my past engagement for the past 4 years.
Awesome, thank you. Amanda, good to see you again. Could you give your little intro and the ways that you've been, really involved at Pitzer and whatnot?
For sure. So good morning. My name is Amanda Martin Lawrence, and I'm a Pitzer 2020 graduate. I graduated with a major in sociology and a minor in legal studies. And my involvement with the Community Engagement Center started in my junior year, as Jan said, where we were both Girls Fly interns. And it continued as I took my social responsibility praxis courses. So I took 2 courses, one being urban and rural social movements, and the other being, wow, Jen, help me out. What was the name of that next class?
Racial politics of teaching.
Thank you, being that class.
Thank you all for sharing. We appreciate it. So the first question is, what is one thing you wish you knew before starting your community engagement internship or project? And that could be through a class, or actually that could also just be through a specific internship that you had with a partner that didn't include a class. So if you want to start from Jan again.
One thing I wish I knew before starting my community engagement or internship project, during my freshman year, I didn't know that class was a social responsibility praxis course. I thought it was just like a volunteer opportunity within the class because it was my first semester, but then it didn't take me until junior year to get involved again, which I wish I had gotten involved freshman, sophomore, and junior year, because seeing now, seeing during senior year what else there was in store, I wish that I had taken advantage of those opportunities a lot more, because then coming into my junior year and senior year, when I started getting involved, it definitely helped me develop more and grow more into what I hope to, become more into my career. So that's definitely something I wish I knew.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing. Stephanie?
I think for me, it's trying to balance everything out. I know whenever you think of like having a project or an internship that is related to community engagement seems easy, but it's actually a lot of work. And now I started asking for funding for Encuentros my junior year after Kevin Kandambi graduated. So I had to figure everything out, and it was very challenging. And I think that's something that I wish I would have known. It's how to ask for funding, how to ask for resources for these workers at Pomona City. And another thing will probably be ways to bring other students to join the community engagement, the project that you're currently working on. I think at first I thought that, I could just tell them, but you need to find like a way for them to kind of like also come to your to whatever you're doing, to find, I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, that does make sense. I mean, look at a way to connect and to have that marketing and whatnot. It's extremely important too, because that's about the sustainable change piece, right? Carrying on the program and whatnot. So yeah, that's definitely something that I mean, like we've been in touch with you about that. So that's really awesome to be able to have that connection with you.
Yeah, I think what Stephanie just said is so important because we have students who are doing community engagement work already and they are involved in the community, but they're not always sharing the work that they are doing with the community engagement center. They don't always share. And I think it's very important to touch base sometimes and just say, hey, this is what we're doing. This is which direction we are taking. So yeah.
Yeah, we just want to support the work that you all do. So thank you again for connecting with us. Amanda?
I think something I wish I knew was that I could go to like the CEC staff when I had a problem. Because I just remember being in one internship and I was having a hard time with it, just like balancing everything. And I just kind of needed to speak to someone. And I ended up doing that a lot later. But I think if I had known that I could do that earlier and also have that support, not just at my community site, but also here at Pitzer, it would have helped me a bit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And we appreciate you giving input on the many things that we've talked about, Amanda. And we value your perspective and your insight on a lot of the things that are happening at Pitzer. So thank you for that too. I mean, you're still valued in your, in your experience and what you're able to provide as far as knowledge. So thank you for that too. And so I want to leave the next question open up for anybody in whatever order to answer, because I don't want to keep going in order in case that's hindering your creative process or your thought process. But the next question is, how has your community engagement involvements impacted you personally and or your career path?
I can take that one.
Okay.
So I'm from Houston, Texas, and my community right now, it's mainly like predominantly like underrepresented. And I think when I started doing encuentros and seeing the workers and just like the fact that sometimes they have jobs on Friday, sometimes they don't. So like a job for them is never a promise. And every time they would come to Pitzer, they would tell me like, stay in school, like do it for me. And it just reminded me a lot of my parents, that kind of made me realize the privilege that I have of being in college and continuing my education, and also the resources that I had, but they never did. So I think just being able to do encuentros and being able to provide them with like little resources that I can share with them kind of made me realize that, so I eventually want to go into med school, and I think we realize that there are communities that do not have the resources that others do, and we have to change that. We have to share these resources with them, and we need to find a way to help these communities. So me being able to bring the workers at Pitzer and for them to meet other students, it makes me happy to know that the workers don't consider Pitzer just like it's a college. They consider Pitzer as a family, and that's already like we're doing something for them. So definitely it changed the fact of how I see the way. I think definitely it made me realize a lot. Like I have to help these underrepresented communities. They don't have the resources that I have in college, and being able to just be in college is already a huge big deal. So
That was a beautiful answer. Thank you. I appreciate all that you said.
It also seemed like you know you you kind of touched a little bit about your positionality as well while you were answering your questions, and then I think we talked about those in representation in our ethic trainings. It's very important to keep in mind your positionality while you are working with these communities in general. um I don't know who was next. Stephanie? No, Amanda?
Sure. I think for me, my involvement with the CEC, it's helped me a lot in terms of giving me language to talk about things that I'm passionate about. So learning about critical multiculturalism, having language to talk about issues within like race and positionality, and just like how you as a person interact with other communities. So I think it gave me a lot of language to move forward in my career and really speak confidently about things that have happened to me or things that I've seen in a way that is just like better and I think more articulate.
That's so true. I find that true for myself before. Like, I mean, there were, when we see a lot of the things that are happening in current events and whatnot, and before when I used to see like, the world's troubles or like some of the social issues that get talked about a lot, I didn't really have the academic framework or just the understanding of like what those things look like. And I really appreciated those who taught me about those kinds of things. So I definitely want to give a lot of value to that because, we're also here and we're not perfect in terms of knowing everything. And we want to be able to learn from you all as well. And our students have a great wealth of knowledge that, we can delve into. So thank you, Amanda, for mentioning that because, we want to interact with you all. We want to know what you all are into because as much as we may have given about this community engagement, training, like there's still plenty for us to learn. And there's still other kinds of academic ways of knowledge that we need to be updated on, as Amanda was talking about in terms of multiculturalism and whatnot. So I believe I didn't finish the full term in what Amanda said, but but academic terms such as that, like we're still learning as well, and we're here to obviously exchange that knowledge too.
And I also think that, while it is important to know all these frameworks, it's also important to value our community's knowledge, our community forms of knowledge, even though they don't have, all the technical terms to address this issue. They're actually living the issues like in person every day, every minute, every hour. So when you go out there and you're doing community work, it's important for you to also look at it as like you're also learning from them as well as applying technical terms and things that you are learning in class, but you also want to be able to like learn from them because there are some specific knowledge that they have that you will never get in class. That's for sure.
Yeah, things don't have to be academic in like the Eurocentric or American sense in order to be effective or to be expressed as such. So I want to recognize that and hold that up for thought as well, just, moving forward, because, a lot of the ways that we may go into spaces, we yet again have to recognize our intersectionality, positionality, and within that, the power and privilege that we do have. So Jan, would you like to go next?
Yeah. So my community engagement within Pitzer has impacted me, or has impacted the way I see every engagement that I partake in. I learned the importance of co-learning and engaging with the mindset of being in solidarity rather than with the mindset of doing things for the sake of charity. And right now, even though we are in a global pandemic and I'm still seeking for employment, I am involved in volunteering for various organizations and putting my time in things that I'm passionate about. And my time as an Inside Out participant is now translating into a new role as a session leader at Prison Education Project. And that engagement from, being a Pitzer student, being an Inside Out participant, everything that I've learned within this program, I'm hoping to be able to continue at PEP. And it means so much to me to know that one, Trisha was the one who connected me to PEP in the first place. And having those relationships is so key for even after my time at Pitzer. So just knowing that the CEC will always have your back, even, after you've graduated, especially into a global pandemic, then it's always just a resource and a way of support. And also with what Amanda mentioned as well, when we learned about critical multiculturalism with Kathy Yep, I take that into spaces where I discuss with new people, where we're in book clubs or discussion groups, and maybe someone hasn't done a dyad yet. And for those who haven't done dyads, I definitely highly recommend it. And one way to do that is definitely by getting involved with the CEC. So yeah, I think what I've learned in Girls Fly, in being a citizenship coach at Literacy for All Monterey Park, and being an Inside Out participant, I'll always carry with me because those are real life experiences that you put theory into practice, and then hopefully it, you know, evolves into more of a praxis as you or as I and we continue to get involved with our communities.
Yeah, thank you so much for that, Jan. And Jan is still involved at the CEC, helping us on this time of pandemic to get awareness out for, you know, the resources that we can provide and whatnot. So through social media. So thank you so much for that, Jan. And you are a great asset to us as well. So we appreciate you and all your kind
Yeah, I
words.
appreciate it. Yeah.
Thanks. And so the last question before we open it up for the audience is, what are some useful tips for interns that you have learned from your involvements, whether it's within your classes for community engagement or whether it's just strictly the partners? What are some tips that you would like for folks to know?
Use the resources that the CEC offers. There's so many free sources on the website. And as Jonathan and Select mentioned, I have been sort of trying to, you know, create posts to bring those out, and I'm working on those. But I've seen so many free things that I was like, oh my gosh, I wish I knew about this. And it goes from, you know, like editing videos, you know, free versions of Photoshop, or just even like community engagements that you can do at this time, even, you know, remote. There's so many things. And in my last semester ever at Pitzer, I seeked like support multiple times just walking into the CEC. And in those last like 2.5 months, I realized that I wish that I had done it more, as Amanda mentioned earlier. But I'm definitely glad that I got to do that. But now they have, you know, like office hours, drop by hours on Zoom. I think that, you know, for those who are getting involved with community engagement this semester, I think it's just so great to just talk to them and just, you know, stop by and yeah, just pull in some resources from them.
Stephanie?
I definitely agree with Jan. I think my junior year, I was always going to Senate for funding till the summer where it's like Salik had a meeting with me and he was like, hey, the CC can actually help you get funding for the workers. And then it was just like, what? Like, I didn't even know I was able to get funding for them. And I actually did. And that's already like a big help. So definitely, like Jan said, use your resources. If you have questions, go ask Jonathan or Salik or like Jan or Amanda, who I'm pretty sure you guys know more than me. So use your resources. If you have an idea of how you want to, like, how can you improve your project or something for class, then go with them. They are willing to help you and they're here for you. And that's the main point. That's the main point of having the CEC.
And my advice would be to journal. I know in my semesters that I did community internships or I was working with the CEC, I learned a lot about myself, and just I think being able to document that change is always good. So I would say journal.
That's awesome. Awesome advice from everyone. Thank you so much. And so now we're going to open up the questions to just everybody that's listening in from the audience. If you have a specific question for a specific someone, feel free to post it in the chat. If you would even actually like to voice it verbally, we're here to listen as well. Is there any questions? Did Kay have a question, Select?
Kay had, I thought Kay had a question.
I think Kay was asking you to type the question that you had asked the panelists into the chat. Sorry, I should have clarified because I think I saw that, but I was like, they'll figure it out. And then we asked other questions, so I think he's okay.
Yeah.
But Emily Pugh had her hand raised, I believe. Or
yeah, so this is for anyone on the panel who might have an idea. I've done some different community service type projects in the past for communities that I don't particularly represent. And I notice when I go back to my own community, you know, predominantly white, they'll ask me about that work. And I sometimes get the feeling that I'm giving them the like impression of what the community is like and how you should interact with them. So I was wondering if other people on the panel have kind of worked with communities that they don't necessarily identify with, and how you should talk about the work that you've done in those communities.
I mean, that's a hard question to answer, but I think definitely being sure that you never speak with a savior complex about the work that you're doing, but you understand and you speak in a way that conveys that you're doing collaborative work. So it's like you speak about what you're doing, but it's not just about like me, what I've done, but it's like I enter this space, we do these things together. These are things that we're collectively working towards is always like a good start.
I agree with Amanda. I think also, again, with the mindset of solidarity and, you know, without the savior complex. I had something else to say and I completely forgot. Oh, and also just making sure to know about your positionality entering the space and even talking about the space in which you've entered and acknowledging, you know, your contribution, but also your identity within that space. And I think if you have the chance as well, what helped me see this more was Kathy Yep and Carmen Fott's class of racial politics of teaching. You know, if you have the chance to do that, I think that's one of the resources that has helped me a lot in finding ways to, you know, go into those spaces with folks who I might not identify with.
Mm-hmm. And one other thing that I want to add to that, if I can, even though I'm not a panelist, is, you know, in your position in an internship or your involvement with a community partner, even if it's not within a class, you know, when we make these connections with these community partners, they see themselves as community educators, right? So they've been working on social issues for decades, and they've been, you know, pushing the needle forward in many awesome ways for not only what's happening locally in like Pomona and the Inland Empire, but in California and in just the United States in general. In many ways, California, you know, is a trend state for, you know, things such as, you know, affirmative action, which is going to be, you know, on the ballot and whatnot, for us to decide on whether, you know, we're going to take those measures. And so that's important for us to recognize, you know, because a lot of these folks are, you know, the community educators can give you an amount of knowledge that allows you to be sensitive to these things and how you share them. And I think that they're a great resource for you to talk to, and at times, like, they are serious, but also at times, you know, they can be pretty candid with, you know, the types of information that you should and shouldn't share and how you frame it. So you want to give a lot of, you know, respect to them, and know that they're not just there for you to, you know, logistically move you to where you need to be and what are your responsibilities. But a lot of them will be even able to talk to you afterwards about your involvement too. So I hope that helps. Any other questions? Thoughts? Anything? Concerns? Experiences?
I have a question that I'd like to ask.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to know what has been the most challenging part of your community engagement experiences and how you moved past those. And just to balance it out, you can tell us about your most rewarding experience too. Sorry, I don't want to be a Debbie Downer. But I just think it's helpful because, like, we always, you know, frame community engagement like it's this really meaningful experience, and it totally is, but it is not easy either. And it can really be challenging in a lot of different ways. So anyway, I just think it's good to, like, talk about that stuff because that's also really real, you know, and it helps us when we're in those situations to recognize that, like, we're not the only one in a challenging situation. It kind of goes with the work.
We're here to learn from one another.
I can go first. I think one of the harder community engagement experiences that I've had was when I did literary coaching with Jan and citizenship coaching. And I think it was very hard for me being the only Black woman in that space, but also being in a space that I was so outside of. And I struggled with it kind of just like going in and not knowing how much I would be able to help because of my identity. And I was able to overcome that by talking to my professor at the time and just like seeking support from her and being very open and honest about this is something that I don't know how to move forward with, and just having her support and just speaking to her and having her come up with like a plan was very helpful. So I think in tough situations, it's always better to seek help and not just like sit with it, because there are people that are there to help you and they want to help you. And I think one of my most like rewarding times was also the very end of that semester where I got more comfortable. So it started out being very uncomfortable, but I felt comfortable. I enjoyed being in that space. I was enjoying just learning about different stories, like things that people would share with me. It became very meaningful.
Thank you.
On that similar note, my answer to that would also be the most challenging part of community engagement is sometimes the discomfort into the growth that comes with growing or growing pains. And there's some times where you're faced with yourself and it requires a lot of self-reflection in the ways that you may have harmed different communities, or you may have like intent wasn't the same as your impact. And I think being able to reflect on those very carefully with the help of some guidance, of some frameworks that the CEC would provide, or the professors, or the engagement would allow you to experience, I think the growth from that is the most rewarding thing, after the difficult discomfort of, the growth. And also what helped me the most was being able to talk to Trisha, being able to talk to Amanda about these things, about how just kind of reflecting. It's kind of like they were my journals at the time, and just helped kind of go back and forth with how can I grow even more, or how can I evolve into the person that I want to be. And I think that's the most rewarding thing, is being able to come out of that experience with a new perspective and a better I guess way to express intentions and match it with your impact.
Thank you.
I think for me, it's that every time we were having encuentros on Fridays, there wasn't a lot of students who would show up. Like sometimes we would have 10 workers and there would be like only 2 students. And I think like a part of me was really upset, because I really wish that on days like that, students could have come. I know like every time I invited them, they always said I had something to do, I can't go. And it made me a little bit upset, because for me, it's like these workers are seeing us as family. And I want to be there, but I also want other students to be there too. So I learned not to be too hard on myself. And just like Jan said, my journal in this case was Professor Calderon. He was always telling me like, hey, it's okay. Like these workers, like even if you don't have 10 students, they're already happy to be at Pitzer. And I kind of learned not to be too hard on myself, but I think I also learned that sometimes you're going to plan things, you're going to plan events for the community, and they're not going to go as you think they are going to go as. So it's okay, because at the end of the day, what matters is that the people who showed up are going to have a great experience, and you are going to have a great experience, and don't be too hard on yourself.
Thank you. Any other last questions? We have 1 more minute before we need to move on to the next portion. Yes, I agree. Our panelists are amazing. So thank you so much for saying that in the chat. Oh, and there's also our Instagram page and our Facebook page down there. Trisha, our director, just posted those. But I just wanted to take the time to say thank you, Amanda. Thank you, Stephanie. Thank you, Jan, for joining us and, really, shedding some light on perspectives and insights that are extremely important and, illuminating things for even us, the CEC, to tap into or to realize. You have given me some thoughts to, mull over and talk to our staff about too. So thank you so much for that. And we appreciate your time and your energy and just your presence. So thank you all so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Select next slide. Now we're going to just talk about the nitty-gritty stuff, which is we actually have important forms and other instructions that we need to give you all moving forward from this particular training session. Jackie is going to talk about the intake form, which is newly reformatted. Jackie is going to drop it in the chat, and going to possibly share screen for you all to navigate or learn how to navigate the form. So thank you, Jackie, who is also our office manager, who's also awesome. So thank you so much for all that you do and the logistical stuff. If you need help with that kind of stuff, go to Jackie. Okay, thanks, Jackie.
Hey guys, good morning. So as Jonathan mentioned, we have an intake form that needs to be filled out by today. There was an issue with the link. There was an inactive link that I accidentally sent out to everybody, but it is now on our website. So the website that Jonathan has up there, which is under important forms and materials, that is the link that you'll need to be filling out, as well as the reading material, so that you don't have to click in and out of boxes or windows. And if you can complete that, it's pretty easy. It's mainly just your personal schooling information. It's not a quiz or anything, so it shouldn't take you more than, I wouldn't say more than 10 minutes, like maybe 5 minutes. Other than that, okay, what else am I talking to them about?
Oh, if you could just share your screen and just navigate the actual.
Oh, hold on, I don't even have that up. Let's see. I'm gonna stop share screen select real quick. Hold on.
Okay.
Awesome.
I can stop.
As I said before, if you could please take note of our CEC Instagram page and Facebook page. Thank you, Trisha, for posting those things. I forgot that I needed to post those things in the chat around this time. So thank you for providing that support. Trisha is our director and is awesome in regards to all the institutional directives and initiatives that she helps to coordinate within our office. So thank you so much for that. And a lot of that has to do awareness for what's happening at the CEC. So. Are there any questions for you all, for us, in the immediate time about these things?
I have a question. Did you say the intake form needs to be completed?
Mm-hmm. The intake form should be completed by today, but it's pretty easy. Usually when we have ethics and orientation training, it's usually fillable within just like a couple of minutes. So I think that, in my opinion, when I looked at it, it may be even easier right now.
Yeah. So if you go on our website on the main page, you can click any of the buttons on the main page just to get you to this, very generic Pitzer page. On the right-hand side is going to be a lot of, all this information on the right-hand side is also on the front page. But you can click on important forms and materials. We have a really cool, quick CEC tips for remote community engagement that Jonathan created, which is some of the stuff that we talked about today in the training. But if you go down here, there's going to be the ethics and orientation forms. That first form is a student intake form, which, let's quick, looks like this. And basically you put your name, student ID, contact information, email address, home college, all of that stuff. And you'll all get a chance to see this as you guys are filling this out. A very important part, you will not be able to submit this form unless you read these linked agreements. And so those are also accessible on this important forms page right here. So if you want to read those first and then go into the form, that might be a little easier instead of having to like click it and then it might take you out of the window and then it gets confusing. So read these ethical practices and voluntary release forms. And then once you read those, you'll click yes. It won't let you go forward if you do not read them and click yes. So please read those because those have a lot of important information as far as like liability and just like Jonathan talked about today, some of the ethical practices of doing community engagement. That's really important when you're doing community engagement. And then you'll click the next button, which I'm not going to do because I didn't fill anything out. And then you will be done. After that, well, I guess today, Jonathan, are you giving them a quiz?
Yeah, I'm going to give them a quiz. So you can stop sharing your screen. And
okay,
I just
one more thing real quick.
Okay.
Just to help them out a little bit, because I know we talked about like reimbursements and stuff like that. So if you are getting clearance, you're going to want to go to our student page under funding support. So normally we would give transportation clearance, students request money for conferences and van reservations. Obviously that's not happening right now. If you are driving someplace to go to clearance, we are trying to accommodate students who have to leave to go very far, or even if you're not going super far. We will cover just the transportation to get clearance, but we don't recommend you actually going out into the physical community to do community engagement just because of COVID, right? So you're just going to fill out this form that looks like this. It's super easy. And please, when you're filling it out, send your home address because obviously nobody's on campus. So your check will go to your box if you don't put your home address that you're currently residing in. Other than that, if you guys have any questions of any form, CEC related, not CEC related, or you might not know who to reach out to, you can always reach out to us. If we don't have answers for you, we can always find somebody else on campus who will help you. So that's my support to you guys. And if you guys, like I said, have any questions, you guys can email me or the CEC_staff at Pitzer. So I'm gonna stop share screening. There we go.
Max is wondering if we can do a little recap on the concept of small wins.
Yeah, so Max, a little recap on the concept of small wins. So small wins is pretty much the thought process of us not focusing just on what are the big goals that we need to do, but what are the incremental steps every day that we can take to work towards a goal. So to give you an example, a program that works on college access needs to have a day-to-day lesson plan before it has great outputs of being able to say a large percentage of their students have been able to access, college way more than before, if it particularly pertains to an underserved or underrepresented community in higher education. And so it's to say that on the groundwork at eye level with one another, with who's building that lesson plan, who's doing the work to build something that can be carried over. Small wins is about, the everyday, day-to-day that's carefully planned and with the greater perspective of how it contributes to the bigger goal. So it's just really a focus on incremental change with time, because we also have to recognize that small wins is also how we carry through the time sense of how things are remembered, things are perpetuated, the same way that harmful things can be perpetuated with time through the cycle of socialization. So it's the everyday kinds of positives that you may make, such as lesson planning for a day, such as providing tutoring to students and allocating resources to them, or directing them to resources that could be shared with, their peers. It's just like the everyday, day-to-day work that allows us not to be bogged down by the fact too that, some of these social problems seem very big and hard for us to combat. But small wins helps us to think about it in a positive way and in an incremental change sort of way that is working towards change. And thank you all so much for listening in and joining us. We're still getting used to the Zoom thing too, and we usually do this in person. So a lot of this presentation, a lot of this training is configured for how we do, interactive activities and whatnot, and getting at some of, some of the information that we share with you all. So thank you so much for being patient and for, being helpful in this. We recognize, your help in all of this and helping us to co-construct parts of this presentation and this training to make it better and whatnot. So thank you so much.